Thanks for joining us and stay with us on the conversation. The first half, we dealt situations in Kenya where there's been a petition to delegitimize President William Ruto, barely 1 year in office, and we've seen series of protests going on in Kenya. Right now, we switch gears to Nigeria, where the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, says a private security contractor called Tantita Security Services has successfully intercepted a suspicious vessel carrying a cargo of crude oil. The interception took place on July 7th. The NNPCL revealed that preliminary investigations have shown that the crude oil cargo was obtained illegally from an offshore well jacket located in Ondo State, Nigeria.
Now, the NNPCL further stated that the arrest details and investigation outcomes have been reported to the relevant government authorities. After careful consideration, it was decided that the vessel would be destroyed in order to send a powerful message and discourage others from engaging in similar illegal activities. Now, joining us for this discussion, we have Bala Zakka, an oil and gas expert who joins us from Lagos. Now, Bala, a warm welcome to you and thanks for joining us in the conversation.
Thank you. What is going on is a clear demonstration that if you put control mechanisms in place, you can check and control or minimize criminality. What is happening in the Nigerian oil and gas industry, especially in the upstream and downstream, are very bad. And that was why when at some point we had that operators in the oil and gas industry were divesting, some of us told the Nigerian government that some of these investors were not actually divesting because they have seen cleaner fossil fuel, but it was because they were running from what we call business climate hostilities. And business climate hostilities basically has to do with so many things. Apart from the community issues they are having, multiple taxes, operating energy costs, one major thing that keeps affecting them has to do with crude oil theft. Crude oil theft is a criminality that must never be tolerated under any guise. Because you're talking about somebody who suffered, invested so much after every activity of exploration campaign, drilling campaign, and production. Then you have some people who don't know the source of the person's fund coming to steal the product. It must never be tolerated and it must be stamped out.
Now, Bala, Nigeria has recorded a surge in oil theft incidents in its oil producing region. How badly would you say it has affected Nigeria's revenue? And what are your thoughts on this recent interception, especially the destruction of the vessel? Because one will be wondering that they concluded an investigation. Why are you destroying evidence? And also the resultant pollution of the area. That isn't it better to auction this sort of ships?
Well, the first thing you have to look at is this is somebody's investment that is being stolen. There is no other way of discouraging an investor compared to when an investor comes, invested, recruited people, paid compensation, paid for licenses of all types, paid for all kinds of permits and taxes. And when it is time for the person to start making production or enjoying the fruit of his or her labor, then all the products are stolen. Let us not forget that some years back, a Nigerian finance minister said that Nigeria was losing about 400,000 barrels of crude oil per day. A lot of people will not understand what that means. But by the time you carry out the necessary conversion, a barrel is the unit of measurement of crude oil. In 1 barrel, you have 42 gallons. And in a gallon, you have 4 liters. By the time you convert 400,000 barrels of crude oil, you are talking about 60-something million liters of crude oil being stolen every day. And the best way to understand it is by dividing the 60-something million liters of crude oil by the capacity of a tanker. which is 33,000 liters. So you're talking about 2,000 tankers of crude oil being stolen every day. That is not a petty thief. That is a well-syndicated, a well-crafted criminality. There is no country, there is no investor that will be losing at that rate and that investor will not collapse. Then the burning of the vessel, I mean, that is the least that can happen. You cannot collect somebody else's a criminal vessels and say you auction it or you sell it out. The best thing is to give that criminal the worst and the deterring punishment. And if burning it is what needs to be done, fine. Like you technically said, of course, we are going to experience what we technically call degradation from what will happen when it is burned and the pollution. But the criminals must be checked. What is also clearly happening is that somehow, somewhere, the control mechanisms are working. Because we have three control mechanisms. The first one is the preventive. The second one is the detective. And the third one is the compensating control mechanism. The preventive is to even prevent the criminal from coming in. But if the criminal beats the preventive control mechanism, at the point of stealing, we should be able to detect the criminal with what we call detective control mechanism. But in this case, the criminals were able to beat the preventive mechanism. They couldn't be prevented from stealing. At the point of stealing, they couldn't also be detected. But after stealing, the principle of fingerprinting and tracing was used to trace them. Even that effort is enough. And this has clearly shown that the stakeholders are working together. And when we talk about stakeholders here, we are referring to the government, security agents, the oil companies, the investors, and the communities. This is what is going to bring back the image of Nigeria, and it will help in boosting the production capacity and volume of Nigeria to help us take care of our OPEC volume quota first, and it will help us by the time we sell this crude oil or we refine them, the process will help in reducing our budget deficit.
Dealings that we have seen, this interception especially. You talked about the fact that the whole preventive measures have been working well. But what has happened the past 12 years? What have been the challenges that have not allowed, to curb this oil theft that we're seeing in Nigeria? Because earlier on you talked about the fact that Nigeria is losing a whole lot from the oil theft. And for this vessel, it has been operating for over 12 years. So what exactly have been the issues?
It was collaboration. It was a well-crafted and a well-syndicated criminality. And the reason why I said so was because if you look at it technically, like I described, 400,000 barrels of crude oil is equivalent to 2,000 tankers. And each of these tankers is a 33,000-liter tanker. Imagine losing that quantity of crude oil per day. It cannot be petitive. It was a well-crafted and a well-syndicated criminality. And it is becoming clear that that criminality was not going to help the image of the community. It was not going to help the image of the government. It was not going to help the image of even the security agents, assuming they are part of the criminality. And if there are saboteurs in the companies also, that is the operating companies, or among the government agents, it is very clear that it was not helping us because investors were technically running away. Even though they were saying they were divesting, but they were running away from business climate hostility. And I think it was time we got our acts together. And in national interest, if we can collaborate, all the stakeholders, the oil and gas journalists, oil and gas engineers, the community, the investors, on the government side, we have everybody and we work in national interest. I mean, we are going to reap the dividend of this product called crude oil.
Quickly, we're still talking about the stakeholders. There was an assertion or accusation from former militant, that's Sara-Igbe, and he said 99% of the oil theft is by Nigerian armed forces. You talk about collaboration, but in a situation where there have now been accusations that even the security agencies are in collaboration with the criminals, don't you see that as also an issue?
Well, it will always happen, and that was why we said it was a well-crafted and a well-syndicated criminality. And let me explain what I mean by that. The military person that were being accused, or the armed forces that were being accused, are probably not the pipeline engineers. They may not know how to operate what we call the Christmas tree or the wellhead. They may not know the technicalities. So somehow, somewhere, a technical person must be involved. That technical person may be from the community, may be from the oil company side, may also probably be from the government side of the regulatory agencies. And that's why in criminality of this magnitude, there must be collaboration. But it's also possible that the armed forces were going to be the major beneficiaries. But somehow, somewhere, they must collude with the oil and gas and the pipeline engineers. They must also collude with some people within the community, so that when that criminality was going on, those collaborators will keep quiet. And at the point of reporting the volume production to government too, it's also possible that there are some government agents that kept quiet and were reporting the fake figures. So when you look at it, and that's why we said it was a well-crafted and a well-syndicated and a well-planned criminality. Somehow, somewhere, whoever was the chief person carrying out the criminality, whether it's the armed forces or whatever you call them, but they got the buy-in and support of criminals within the other areas, from the community, from probably the government arm, and also from probably the oil companies or the investors.
Bala, a multi-billion naira pipeline surveillance contract was awarded by the NNPCL to a former leader of the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, Govt Ondo. What would you say about this contract? And could this recent discovery, this interception of stolen crude by that vessel, be attributed to this contract? And what do you make of NIMASA, and security agencies whose their primary responsibility is to secure this critical national asset? Are you happy with this arrangement, or the government has with a former Niger Delta militant, or should securing our pipelines be left to just government agencies and security organizations?
First and foremost, Tompolo had been and is still a Nigerian. If at some point, we had people some Nigerians that we were calling militants, they were first of all Nigerians, and I probably loyal Nigerians. I want to believe something happened before they went into criminality. Whatever that thing could have been, I may not know. It was probably due to the degradation in their area. It could have been deprivation. It could have been greed. I cannot say. But we got to a point where it became very clear that every Nigerian is needed to nip criminality in the bud. Every lover of Nigeria was needed to make sure we check criminality. So if at some point, even people that we call probably so-called militants or so-called bad guys decided that in national interest, everybody was going to come together so that we work together, fine and good. But there is something that we also have to make clear. To me, that does not in any way show sign of disregard or disrespect for the regulatory and the legitimate security agents of Nigeria. When you were talking about NIMASA, of course, NIMASA is a body that is recognized by Nigeria. But at the end of the day, those working in NIMASA are also Nigerians. And that's why we talk about collaboration. When you are talking about national interest and progress of a country or even a local government or a family, everybody must be seen as a positive stakeholder working for a common interest or common goal. And that common goal is safeguarding the assets of either the family or the state or the country and bringing glory. And in the context of Nigeria and what is happening, to make sure Nigeria regains her position of the African biggest crude oil and gas producer, Nigeria should be able to meet up with her OPEC quota, then Nigeria should be able to have enough crude oil to sell and take care of her budget deficits and other developmental ancillaries.
Investigation, because it's not just about burning the vessel. We need proper investigation to find out who exactly these corporates are, the high-powered people, who they are exactly. And there was talk by former militant on Polo, where he said that the militants have been wrongly accused for this crude oil theft going on. At the same time, that's the first question. The second one is this Tantita security operation. I mean, what do we know exactly about it? Because there are records that the person in charge there was also intercepted, or rather interrogated by the EFCC. So what can you tell us, first of all, about this Tantita security vessel that intercepted, security organization that intercepted this vessel, and also the accusations against militants?
Well, first of all, at some point, to be honest, when the militants wanted, I was calling them crusaders, actually, personally. At some point, when they wanted their views heard, and probably their views were not heard at their local government level, at their chief or traditional rulers level, they felt probably even at the state level, nobody was listening to them. So they just got to a point where they felt if trying to show some level of violence was going to help and draw the attention of government, that was what they were going to do. Because I remember when it all started, I mean, they were not, it was clear, their traditional rulers were not listening to them. Their political leaders, whether you call them local government chairman, House of Reps, governors, and the senators, were not helping them. They also discovered that at some point they needed to make certain things clear. They actually started with kidnapping of foreigners. And when nobody was giving them attention, they started kidnapping even Nigerians. And when that was not giving them the required attention, they felt they needed to start breaking pipes and blowing up some pipes. So if you look at it, if you look at the chronology, they actually started with the usual representation or expression of concern about their area, their welfare, and other things that they needed to develop and grow and be part of this great country called Nigeria. So when you look at the chronology, it was clear that something emboldened them. And to me, the good thing is today we are still one indivisible Nigeria. Today, even some people we thought were going to be scary, will remain militant forever, have decided to join the vanguard of making sure Nigeria regains her days of glory. I think that is the most important thing. But those bad days were truly bad days. They were not good for Nigeria's image. But we are happy that today we are seeing the positive side of collaborating together, working together for the greater good of our country.
Finally, as we wrap up this conversation, what steps can be taken to improve? Because you talked about how things used to be bad, where no, it's not yet to huru, there's still a lot of work to be done. But what steps can be taken to improve the monitoring and enforcement of offshore wells to prevent unauthorized access and extraction of crude oil, so we can meet up with our OPEC quota and also shore up foreign exchange revenues from the sale of crude oil?
Well, the first thing is to prevent criminality. And when you're talking about preventing criminality, all the stakeholders that have positive intention for the growth of Nigeria or the oil and gas industry should look inward. And what I simply mean is this: among the government agents or the regulatory agencies of government, they should look inward. Do they have bad eggs among them? That is their responsibility. Among the security agents, they should look inward. Among the communities, they should look inward. You know, among even those we call so-called militants, they should look inward. But an important thing that I know is supposed to happen is this: whatever is being appropriated for some of those communities that are suffering from this degradation, whatever is being appropriated for either educational advancement or development or for health concerns should please get to the appropriate portal. If it is education, please provide it. If it is health, please provide it. If it is safety gadgets, please please provide it. That is one. Then secondly, there is a need for reciprocity. If all the goodies are getting to the right places, then it is the duty of especially the communities, to make sure they give the maximum cooperation. It is also the duty of the traditional rulers to keep, doing the right thing. Then it is also the duty of investors in this case to comply with everything they have agreed with their host community on corporate social responsibilities. It is also the responsibility of government to make sure.
Bala, I must say that there's a whole lot that needs to be done. Collaborative efforts into dealing with crude oil theft. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. We'll continue to have more on this and hope that there are more interceptions to prevent crude oil theft that we have witnessed in Nigeria. Thank you once again for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you, and thank you again.